Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour. It's edition 223, week 48 of 2025. I'm Alexander Leipman. A special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time. If that's you, if you've been visiting Sandton or you've just come across the Sandton Times Hour on whichever your platform is of choice, well, good to have you join us. And if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, across Gauteng, Johannesburg, Pretoria specifically, or South Africa, or even somewhere else in the world, if it's online or on air, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. And I'm joined by Vincenzo behind the mixing desk. And yeah, Vincenzo, you heard that right. The Sandton Times Hour is nominated for Best Talk Show in South Africa on a community station in the 2025 Telkom Radio Awards, which we're exceptionally proud of. And the winners will be announced at a gala event on Saturday, 6th December 2025 at the Sandton Convention Centre, so fingers crossed. But in the meantime, thank you to all of those involved in the show, especially you, who tune in and listen every single week, whenever you listen, be it on air, streaming, online, however you connect. It's much appreciated, and it's good to have you as part of this nomination, and a feather in all our caps. So, as we always do every week, a quick look at the diary for this week. I had the pleasure of emceeing a 2-day conference in Sandton on banking, finance, and manufacturing. And I hope some of the delegates get a chance to tune in. Some of the people were asking me, tell me about your radio show and your podcast. And here it is. So if you're tuning in from there, good to have you listening. Then Police Eyewear from Specsavers had their big reveal of their latest collection at the very top of the Leonardo, the highest urban bar in South Africa for sure. Debatable if it's across Africa, but certainly one of the highest points. And it was a great evening. The weather was spectacular. It was literally like a sandwich between two rainy days, and the day they chose, the sun was out, the perfect weather for some sunglasses. There was also a walkabout of the first ever Walmart store to open in South Africa, which is very interesting, and that's at Clearwater Mall. A little bit outside of Sandton, but nonetheless, we wanted to go have a look and see what this is going to look like, as I'm sure they're going to be opening way more Walmart stores. Then Starbucks hosted a tasting of all their festive flavors, and I don't know what your favorite Christmas flavor is. Mine, gingerbread. I love the gingerbread offering from Starbucks. It's my go-to. I think it's the little crispy bits that they put on top that just gives it that extra texture. It's tremendous. Then we had Nespresso that also launched some of their flavors with an African twist ahead of the festive season, and they also had a bit of a festive mug painting as well. And then the Global Citizen Now session, which took place in Sandton, as well as the G20. What a weekend. Fighter jets, military helicopters cutting across the Sandton skyline, sleek motorcades gliding through its streets, hundreds of police officers standing guard at nearly every intersection. I mean, it was the perfect 72 hours to walk around Sandton with not a worry in the world. Not a worry. But now, it's back to reality for most South Africans. It's all over. So let's see what happens now. But what's happening this week on the Sandton Times Hour? In a bit, I'll be chatting to one of South Africa's classical music gems and gentlemen about his upcoming Christmas concert in Johannesburg. Take a listen to that. Then there's a new eatery in town that'll have you looking at salt in a very different way. And I'll be getting all the details for you. As always, I then catch up with our regular entertainment commentator to take a look at all the latest documentaries, as well as some recommendations of your favorite Christmas movies, which we'll be doing every single week. What Christmas movies should you be rewatching or watching? And finally, I chat to a comedian coming to Sandton for a 1-week run of her latest show, and you don't want to miss that. All this and more in a jam-packed hour, but I'd also like to hear from you. So if you want to get in touch, you can send through your questions, comments, and feedback to email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, on social media at Sandton Times, and then also the website sandtontimes.co.za, and then also the WhatsApp number, our exclusive WhatsApp number to the Sandton Times Hour, 084 Sandton, 084 726 3866. Use that, and of course I always encourage you to be part of the podcast community as well, so be sure to subscribe to the Sandton Times Hour on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Pick your favorite one, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Online, on air,
anywhere, anytime.
This is the Sandton Times Hour.
So Richard Cock is a man who really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. He's a conductor and a visionary man who turns Christmas in Johannesburg into a proper celebration amongst many other classical endeavors. For decades, Richard has been at the helm of the Symphony Choir of Johannesburg, bringing families together with carols we all know and love and a touch of magic only he can conjure up. From sold-out concerts with the Phoenix Orchestra to collaborative shows with international stars like Joshua Bell and Catherine Jenkins, Richard has made classical and choral music feel vibrant, personal, and thoroughly South African. He's also been a driving force behind the R&B Starlight Classics for many years and a champion of music outreach from Soweto to Eldorado Park. Today, we're talking Christmas carols and how a life dedicated to music has shaped Johannesburg's cultural calendar. Richard Cock, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour. It's an absolute honor to have you on.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for having me.
Richard, you've been described as someone who has done more than anyone in South Africa to popularize classical music. What's been your passion and your drive for making this genre accessible to so many people?
Well, my passion and drive is that I love it myself. And I'm always happy to share it and hope that other people will get hooked on it as I was hooked as a young boy. Actually, I was about 12, I guess, when I first joined a choir and got hooked on choral music. And it was later when I was about 18 and thinking what I was going to do after school. Originally, I wanted to be a farmer, and then the farm was sold. So I knew my career as a farmer was probably dead at that moment. So the director of music at the school where I was said, "Don't let that worry you. You'll make a fantastic music teacher." And in fact, that's what I've been all my life. I've been a music teacher who leads people onto classical music. That's what I love doing.
Well, agriculture's loss is certainly our gain in the entertainment space. But music has been a constant in your life. I mean, like you've said, ever since you were growing up. But have there ever been moments where you've been challenged or they've shaped you as a musician and as a conductor?
They definitely have. The first, one of the big challenges was when funding was taken away from the National Symphony Orchestra, which I was running at that time. The orchestra belonged in inverted commas to the SABC, and that was a huge challenge. And actually, it was that sort of tipped me over the edge into the career where I now am, as doing everything on a freelance basis. So from about just before 2000, I've been freelance for the last 26, 27 years. And that has changed the way that I look at music and how I do things and run choirs and run orchestras and run my life, actually. And I've always been sort of entrepreneurial, right from my earliest days, and it's now on a grander scale, and we take much bigger risks. But at the center of it always has been choirs and choir music, because choirs have always run for me on a sort of voluntary amateur basis, but with people that really love what they're doing. They're there because they want to be there. And that's what I try to get my audiences to do. They've booked for a concert. They want to be there. I want to give them a special experience and make sure that they go away wanting to come back for more.
So you have taken a step back from the R&B Starlight Classics, which you've run for many decades. I know you're also taking a little bit of a step back in terms of a lot of your other musical endeavors and performances. Are you sort of retiring? Are we seeing Richard Cock sort of going into sort of the sweeter sounds of his life, or are you still going to be there till the very end, Richard?
I'm still going to be in it till the very end. But there's a need in all these things for a sort of succession plan, and that's where I am right now. I've taken on some young conductors with Starlight Classics. They've taken over now. I mean, there is a director in place who directs it and so on, but we gave several young conductors the opportunity to do it, and they are now doing it on a more full-time, not full-time, but on a more permanent basis. And I've dropped out of Starlight Classics. And with the choirs, I mean, I'm now 76, And I think it's time for other people to do the hard work, the hard yards. And I'm taking this opportunity to be able to do things in other centres, which I didn't have time for before. So for next year, I'm doing quite a few concerts in Cape Town. Not that I haven't done them there before, but at times now that I'm free, like Easter, for example, where for 45 years I've conducted my own choir at Easter, I can now conduct someone else's choir at Easter. And it's that sort of thing. So I will still keep on the things that I love doing. And instead of doing 100% or 120% energy into everything, I'm now just doing 100%. But I'm still going to be pretty busy next year doing lots of concerts around South Africa and perhaps doing them at times that I couldn't do them before.
Well, you've got one very special concert coming up, I think one that people always look forward to, and that is the Christmas concert with the Symphony Choir of Johannesburg at the Linda Auditorium. What can people expect from this year's performance?
Well, Christmas has always been very special. I love Christmas and I love Christmas carols. And I never tire of doing them. I mean, I'm probably doing, I don't know how many Christmas concerts this year, maybe 10 all around the country. Yeah, not only in Joburg, but also, I mean, I've already done 2, if you can believe it. We did one in Benoni last weekend, and then my wife actually did one at Stay in the City. So Christmas is a special time. Everyone loves Christmas, kids especially. And what I like to do is to have a family Christmas concert. So we've got songs, carols for the audience to sing, because people love singing also. And they like the old trad carols. You know, "O Come All Ye Faithful," "Silent Night," "Hark the Herald Angels," "While Shepherds Watched," all that stuff. But this year is John Rutter's 80th birthday. John Rutter is a British composer who has written some fantastic Christmas carols. And we're doing 6 of his Christmas carols. He's got a real gift for melody and a real gift for words. And we're celebrating that fact. And he has sent us a special message on video that we will play at the concert. And then we've got some fun carols like Feliz Navidad, "O Holy Night," and then some real sort of American pizzazz with the Christmas festival, a sleigh ride, and then jingle bells right at the end. So, yeah, it's a fun concert. I love fun concerts.
Well, if you aren't in the mood for Christmas yet, I'm sure this concert will put you on track. And as always, Richard Cock pulling out all the stops in making it extra festive. December 6th and December 7th, we'll put all the details up on the Sandton Times website.
I think the 7th is already sold out. So it will have to be the 6th, I'm afraid. Booking is at Quicket. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it from Richard himself and Richard Cock. Thank you very much for joining us on the Sandton Times Hour, and thank you for being such a lifeblood for classical music in South Africa. I've always shuddered at the thought of you retiring, but I'm glad to hear that you are making plans.
Yeah, I'm just slowing down.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you
very much. Thanks for your support.
Tremendous. It's time for a quick break on the Sandton Times Hour, and some more interviews and music right after this.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So as we dive into a world where flavors meet fascination, and where one man has turned the simplest mineral on earth into a culinary art form, with an incredible 40 years of mouth-watering mastery behind him, chef, patron and restaurateur Craig Cormack has carved out a legendary status as South Africa's very own salt chef. Since 2009, Craig has been dazzling taste buds at food and wine shows with his expert ability to pair dishes, vintages, and salts. Yeah, you heard that right. Salts. To create an experience guests will never forget. From award-winning collaborations with culinary icons like Bertus Besson and Beau de Toy, spanning kitchens such as Overture, the Goose Roasters, the Salt at Nedlingshof, to lovingly curating a global collection of more than 184 unique salts. Think pink Peruvian rock crystals to smoky Danish Viking grains. Craig's creativity knows no boundaries. Today, he's not just a chef, he's a storyteller of flavors and, of course, salts. And through his restaurants, books, and specialty ventures like Amole Salt, Craig continues to champion unrefined, naturally harvested salts and the ancient techniques that elevate them. From smoking and curing to pickling and cooking, tracing culinary history back to over 2,000 years. And with that, Chef Craig Cormack, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks very much, Alexander. Very excited to be on your show.
Craig, many would say this time of the year, 'tis the seasoning, but in your case, salt truly is the seasoning all year round.
Indeed, yeah, it's something that I don't think I'll ever get tired or bored of. It just excites me and stimulates me in so many different ways and means, where most people just look at it as just salt.
Well, let's rewind back to 2009. I think that's kind of when the salt journey began. What was the moment that made you realize that salt could be just more than what we know it to be on a dinner table?
Yeah, so my first experience was literally the first thing that I'd done was pairing food, wine, and salt. Took 3 salts, 3 wines, and 3 old cooking techniques. And that was even a push back then with regards to salt and even, one's understanding of food. You think of it very shallowly, but actually we use it every single day in food. The response was so overwhelming for me that I found, this is something I need to look into, because there seems to be more to it. And after finding or making contact with various salt mines and salt pans, people were like asking, who's this guy? Like, why is he asking all these questions? What does he want from us? And it made me feel rather like a stalker. But in actual fact, I don't think anybody's ever thought of salt like I do. And I think it kind of created a bit of curiosity from their side. And that's really where the journey just began to grow and grow.
Well, I mean, you certainly made me think about it. I mean, I had the pleasure of eating at your new space in Houghton called the Salt Road Houghton. And there, salt does take center stage. I mean, you presented us with 3 different salts. I think the one was a Hawaiian volcano rock salt of, I mean, forgive me for the terminology, but I'm kind of trying to remember what it was. And it really takes it from just your normal table salt, or even if some people wanted to really be adventurous, your pink Himalayan salt. It just takes you to a whole new stratosphere of salts.
Indeed, no one has really ever thought about looking at salt differently, and I think with the scope and the variety of salts that I have, as you experienced on that evening, when you start talking about it, you actually realize there's a heck of a lot of information behind that. And I've literally used that information and explored to all forms of levels, from reading doctorates from 2 different doctors, theses that they've created from how the body operates, to salt as a whole. Traveled to salt pans around the world. I'm obsessed by it. And I just find that there's so much information until we begin to think about it. Before then, it's just salt.
I mean, 184 different varieties is an unbelievable collection of different salts. I mean, I couldn't even fathom that you could even get that much salt. But which one of these currently excites you the most?
So people ask the question, and I think I have to give it a bit of fairness across the globe. So I have to take South Africa into consideration, and definitely good reason for that is the Beleni sacred salt, which is a South African salt coming from the Limpopo region, which is a long story about a tribe that's been making salt for just over 2,000 years in exactly the same methods that they did back then, which fascinates me no end. And the other one that's really a massive standout for me is the, unfortunately, Australian salt, Murray River pink salt, which is an incredible textured salt, colored salt in a sense of a pinkish color. And the flavor profile is so perfectly balanced, whereas the Limpopo one is a bit bigger. It's in your face. It's a spring salt, and it's really delicious.
I can agree. And I mean, when you start eating salts the way you present them, it starts making you think very differently. And I know there's a lot of people already thinking about their Christmas menus and their festive season menus, and salt is going to play a big part of that. What do you think most home cooks get wrong when it comes to using salt to elevate their dishes?
Both at home and also within culinary operations, restaurants, hotels, and I think it even goes back as far as when you're an apprentice. People don't really teach you how to season. And I think seasoning has always been a very strong point on mine anyway. And then with discovering salt, it's now even bigger. I can push those levels of flavor even higher than most people think you can, because they're too scared it's going to be salty. I always go back to like when chefs are seasoning and they got like a 10-liter or 20-liter pot of soup and they put like a pinch of salt in. And then I look at them and I say, guys, come on. Really, do you think that little pinch is going to season it? You can put a handful in there, and then they look at you like it's impossible. And then they do, and they realize the value add on a sense where flavor is absolutely accented to its maximum. But it's a process of learning. process of understanding and also experience. So people are just too scared, I think, in general, to actually season. And also, if you're using the right salts, it makes it a lot better than our commercial salt, unfortunately.
Well, you touched on the commercial salt, and I mean, we briefly chatted about this as well over dinner, saying that there's quite a few misconceptions about salt in general.
So when I first started doing my dinners, so it took the format of a sort of a pop-up restaurant, if you like. So I would create a dinner based on a book that I read by a chap called Mark Kalansky. He sort of took 600 pages to explain the history of salt, which I found extremely fascinating. I've read a few more since then. It fascinates me that there's always more information on that. So I kind of created menus, 4, 5, 6 courses paired with wines. That's kind of the difference that sets us apart. So when I did that, I started to realize that there was so much information that could be taken into account. The whole idea behind that is that you start to realize that the bigger picture is that people have no real understanding for salt. And as soon as we start to explore those reasons, you start to understand salt in its bigger picture. So those old dishes, unfortunately, people can't actually handle that amount of salt because it's just too much. We're not used to that level anymore. We have fridges and refrigeration. So preservation has taken a new stance. And I think, it opens up one's mind in the bigger scheme of things.
Well, if you want to open up your mind about all things salt, I encourage you to go check out the Salt Road Houghton, brand new eatery. I'm going to put up the details up on the website if you want to go check it out, especially now over the December break where you've got a bit of time to maybe spend a little bit more time and also lean into the concept of trying different salts. As I say, they present you with different salts. You get to try different salts from different parts of the world with different kind of dishes. It's really fabulous. And Chef Craig Cormack, it's been so great having you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very excited. And you have a wonderful festive season.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
Taking you into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leipner. And if there's anything that sounded good during the show, but you didn't manage to get all the details, be sure to visit the show notes on the website, sandtontimes.co.za, for a detailed breakdown and some additional reading with links and so much more. And also be sure to check out the social media accounts at Sandton Times or register your WhatsApp on 084 Sandton. That's the exclusive Sandton Times WhatsApp line, 084 726 3866, and send through your voice notes, text messages, and more. As we always do this time of the hour, we connect with our entertainment commentator, Tat Wolfen. And Tat, this week we've got another great lineup of things for people to watch as the holidays come ever nearer.
Yes, we certainly do. And of course, we're approaching the festive season. You know, the festive season obviously is a time for great jollity, but it also is a time that we sometimes get a bit nostalgic and sad, and we think about people who are no longer with us, and we also sometimes think about celebrities who are no longer with us, and that's why I wanted to cover 2 showbiz documentaries that have just arrived on the streaming scene, and the one is called The Golden Girls, 40 Years of Laughter and Friendship.
Yes.
And that's just dropped on Disney Plus, as you probably know. And it's a documentary. You know, Disney Plus is screening a lot of ABC docies because, of course, ABC belongs to Disney as well, as does another 70% of Hollywood, I guess. Yeah. The Golden Girls, 50 Years of Laughter and Friendship. Look, it is a very formulaic, typical TV type bio documentary. For those of us who miss the Golden Girls and who have fond feelings about those 4 women who are all now no longer with us, I think it makes for a nice nostalgic trip.
Well, it was quite an iconic TV show of its time. I mean, in the 80s, I think it was probably one of the biggest or most watched regular shows, what do they call them, sitcoms on television. Yeah. And I mean, these 4 elderly ladies, kind of living life in their golden era in their own ways. They each had their own little quirk, and they were very likable.
And, it just shows you that movies or TV shows can sometimes yield complete surprises. Now, who would have thought before they put out the first episode that this would appeal to such a cross-section? I mean, I watched it as a young kid, a young boy, watching a sitcom about elderly women, and that's one of the things that does come through in the documentary, that it says to you that one of the crucial things about this show is that it told you that old people are still humans. They are not dead yet. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's really important, because young people seem to just negate older people. In fact, they can walk past them in a mall and not even see them. Older people tend to become invisible, and I think that's very sad. We're a very youth-focused society and culture. So this showed you that because you're old, it doesn't mean that you don't exist. And you are still really, as I think one of the characters even pointed out in the show, that these characters were still young girls, despite the fact that their exterior appearances would say otherwise.
And everyone had their favorite, Tat. Everyone. It was either Dorothy, Rose, there was Blanche, and then there was Sophia, which I think was the oldest of the four. And everyone...
Sophia was the mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was literally, everyone had their favorite. And it also had a very iconic theme tune, Thank You for Being a Friend. I think originally written by Andrew Gold, and he said at the time that he'd written this thing in under an hour. It was like a throwaway song that he came up with.
Yeah.
It was re-recorded, and it became, I think, almost as iconic as the show itself.
Incredible. I still often find myself humming or singing that song.
Well, maybe we'll play it at the end of the show. I must actually try and see if I can find it, or Vincenzo will go and have a look, and maybe we should play it at the end.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
My favorite was always Beatrice Arthur, because I enjoyed her in the show Maud as well. And Maud was a spin-off from All in the Family. She played the cousin, the liberal cousin of the conservative Archie Bunker. So there was that lovely interplay between them. And I was actually very privileged to have met and spoken to Beatrice Arthur.
Oh, wow.
So, that's one of my little treats, one of my little ticks in my career as a showbiz journalist.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a friend, and thank you for the documentary. As I say, it's not really groundbreaking, but it does have some insights in it. And if you enjoyed the show, I think you'll enjoy the docu.
Awesome. And then you've got another docu with John Candy.
Called John Candy, I Like Me.
Okay.
And I always loved John Candy, and I always suspected that in real life he was very much like the characters he played in movies such as Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains and Automobiles. Kind, vulnerable, gentle, thoughtful of other people's emotions and things. And it turns out that he actually was that person. You see all these interviews with people, and Bill Murray is one of the people that they interview in this documentary. And early on in the documentary, he says, I'm really sorry, but I can't find any horrible things to say about this person. I wish I could, because normally when you see documentaries, particularly about people who have died, because once the person's died, they can't sue you, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So, and often when you see documentaries about well-loved people, you hear about their darker side.
Well, I remember him as the coach of the team in Cool Runnings, that Jamaican bobsled team.
Bobsled team, yeah. My favorites of his, and I guess there are quite a few, but my favorites are Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains and Automobiles. If you watch that movie and come away with a dry eye, then maybe you need to see a shrink, because it's such a moving film. Sadly, it's not available on the local streaming services, but you can get it from our two local DVD hire places, DVD/Blu-ray hire shops, which are still hanging in there, and I salute them for that. That's the Majestic in Greenside and Video Spot in Craigle Park. They're still there, and they still have, I often think of these iconic movies, and you just can't get hold of them on the streaming services. And if you don't have them in your own physical library of DVDs or Blu-rays, you can always go and hire them.
And then we've literally got 1 more minute to touch on our Christmas movie for this week, which is Love Actually.
Love Actually is one of those movies. It's incidentally available on Amazon Plus or Prime,
Yeah.
whatever they call themselves
Yes.
these days. It's one of those movies where there are a whole lot of bits and pieces that sort of come together at the end. All these sort of disparate stories, and they kind of gel by the end of the movie. I remember enjoying it when I saw it. Some people love this movie to bits. They watch it every year around Christmas time. I remember enjoying it and not being completely enamored of it. I don't know what your feelings were about the movie.
Listen, I think I remember the one part of the movie that stood out for me was the scene at the airport. And I think it's the opening scene and the closing scene where they speak about how the arrivals lounge is always the happiest place that people meet, because people are always welcoming family, loved ones, friends, etc., etc. And the movie sort of stuck with me, and it's also got a very cool soundtrack, and I think we're going to play out with that in just a second with one of the songs from Love Actually.
And I was just going to quickly throw in a lovely short on Disney Plus called An Almost Christmas Story, animated movie about a young owl who is lost and befriends a little girl.
All right, well, go check that out. Tat, we're going to chat all things, more Christmas movies to go watch and everything else that's happening at the moment in the world of entertainment, and we'll do it next week again.
And I'll catch you hopefully in a festive mood next week as well.
Tremendous, Tat. Always good to connect with you.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
Gilli Apter, the London-based comedian originally from Johannesburg, is returning to the Sandton Theatre on the Square for a limited run of her show called The Hilarious, Deep, Amazing Joburg Comedy Show, a production that has been packing out venues from London and Lisbon to Zurich, Vienna, Helsinki, and beyond. And then obviously she adapts the name of the show to that. So because people don't always know where Joburg is in these countries. Gilli began her stand-up journey right here in Johannesburg before becoming a regular on the international comedy circuit, most often lighting up stages across London. Her comedy, a brilliant blend of confidence, razor-sharp observations, and delightfully unfiltered storytelling, dives into everything from relationships to AI, ADHD, kids versus not kids, and the every amusing contrast between crime in Johannesburg and, of course, the complete lack of crime in places like Switzerland. As she brings her internationally acclaimed show back to the city where it all began, we're thrilled to welcome her on the Sandton Times Hour. Gilli Apter, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Gilli, you've been performing across Europe, places like London and Helsinki, as I've pointed out. What's the biggest culture shock when it comes to these cities? Is it the cold weather, the polite audiences, or the fact that no one in Zurich seems to know what crime is?
I think the biggest contrast for me is personal, the one-on-one interactions with all kinds of people every day. You know, in South Africa, I come back here, the manager from the restaurant that I go to gives me a hug, asks me how my mom is. And in London and places like, Northern Europe, they don't even look you in the eye. You know, they can just walk right past you, ignore you. So I think it's like my biggest culture shock is people's different attitudes all over the world.
So you haven't had anyone in Switzerland hug you and ask you how your father is?
No, they never do.
Unbelievable. Listen, you left Joburg for London quite some time ago. I mean, you've been there for a while. Have you sort of adapted to sort of the way of the Londoners, the rent, the weather, the fact that people voluntarily just stand in queues?
You know what? South Africans can never, ever, ever adapt to London rent. It's something that I believe in your soul you can never become accustomed to. But having said that, everything else, yeah, I think I look like a solid Londoner. You know, I keep my head down. I walk fast. I try to stay out of people's way when I'm on my way down to the tube. But yeah, you know, you become accustomed to I travel a lot. I go to lots of different places, and I've learned how to sort of blend in, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you've been back in South Africa now, having been out of the country for quite some time. Is there any interesting observations that you've had since you've been back?
You know, there's so many crazy things going on in Joburg, especially now around this G20. I've seen lots of interesting billboards. Like, this is welcome to the most race-regulated country in the world. I saw one the other day that was not taken down, which I found interesting. Like, that's something you would never see in a European city, you know, never. It would shock the pants off them.
And you've seen we've managed to sort out the potholes, the lights, the water. I mean, at least for a week.
For my arrival.
Yes, that's
it's
right.
actually in time for my arrival. I'm so honored. And, you know, I rented a car because I don't have a car anymore here. I was like, I don't need that tire and windscreen waiver. It's the G20. All the roads are perfect.
But does that not make Johannesburg a funnier city to perform in than places like Helsinki and Lisbon? And
I have to say, the attitude of people is so much warmer and so much more open, and actually much more. What's the word I'm looking for? Less judgmental. You'd think South Africans are judgmental. We're actually not. More open to ideas. When I did my show here last year, after doing it for like a year in Europe, I felt so accepted. I felt like even if I hold a different opinion about one political thing or another, the South African audience is open to listening. And that's something you don't always see everywhere else in the world. So it's so fun to perform here to South Africans.
What do you experience in other parts of the world? How do people receive it?
People are very scared of offense. They're mostly scared on behalf of other people, that you're going to offend the other people in the room. And in South Africa, we're not so scared, I think. I was surprised to discover that. I thought we were quite easily offended, but we're not. We're not. We're accepting and we're open. And if you're respectful, South Africans will always listen to you with an open mind.
And then do you have that dynamic where you've got sort of expats in the audience versus people who are sort of homegrown Luxembourgers or whatever, and the South Africans have a bigger laugh than they do?
Not necessarily. I don't necessarily have that many South African expats come to my shows. They're the very small minority in the audience. And I think they mostly come up to me and tell me afterwards that they are just so happy to hear a South African accent again.
That's amazing. Now, what's the funniest thing you've experienced in life or during a show this year, having toured quite a bit?
Hopefully the funniest thing in a show is me at any given point. Yeah, I've had some people like, it's not, I don't know. Oh, you know what? Somebody fell asleep in the front row in Athens. It's actually crazy because it was such a wild show. It was so much fun and it was so like fun and wild, and people were shouting out funny things. And this man fell asleep in the front row, and I could see his wife was trying to like nudge him awake. And I didn't want to do that. Like, I thought, let the guy sleep. He's obviously tired,
Well, he could probably sleep through a hurricane as well, if that's the case. But
no, if he's sleeping in the front row of a comedy show.
Unreal. Tell me,
he's a fearless man.
The source of comedy often comes from places that are challenged, like Johannesburg, like South Africa. Does it become harder trying to find jokes in places that are just so vanilla that you sort of struggle to try and find something that's funny and not completely ridiculous?
Not necessarily. Often the joke becomes about how vanilla it is. The jokes become about what like a Swiss person thinks crime is, for example. Or what in like perfectly safe Austrian city they think is like their dodgy area, which is like, nothing we would consider. In fact, we would be happy to move to their dodgy areas any day of the week.
Sure.
So it usually becomes about that. There's always something to laugh at in any country and any culture, always. And in fact, because so many of the people in my shows are expats, not South African expats, but expats from all over the world, they're always happy to hear an outsider's take because it's stuff that's on their minds as well.
For sure. Now, listen, you performed the show last year in Sandton. You're back again this year with a show named quite similarly, if not quite the same.
Yes. It's the return. Last year was the Hilarious, Deep, Amazing Joburg Comedy Show, and this is the return of the Hilarious, Deep, Amazing Joburg Comedy Show.
So I'm assuming there's a couple of new things that you're going to be bringing to the stage.
There's a couple of new things. There's a couple of old things. Unless you really were paying very close attention, for you, I think it will feel like a mostly new show, but it's not entirely new show. The way I do my shows is, they evolve over time. I'm not necessarily a comedian who writes a brand new show from scratch every single year with entirely new content. I build on what's come before. But I think it's will still feel like a fresh experience, even if you came last year.
Well, if you want to watch the return of the Hilarious, Deep, Amazing Joburg Comedy Show with Gilli Apter, it's on from the 25th to the 30th of November at the Sandton Theatre on the Square. We'll put up the details on the Sandton Times website if you want to book some tickets, and a great way to wind up the year. And Gilli Apter, it's been great having you on the show again.
Thanks so much for getting me on here and having so much patience in doing so.
Anytime, Gilli, anytime. That wraps another Sandton Times Hour for another week. Feel free to send through your questions or comments. You can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, or you can connect on social media at Sandton Times, or visit the website sandtontimes.co.za. Also, save the number 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866, and you can send through your voice notes, text messages, and media on that number. And as always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and all the other leading digital audio platforms and join the growing community there. Thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes, pulling it all together. And a special thank you to you for listening. And God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.